A soaking wet circuit, rain hammering the tarmac, and a four-time Formula One world champion in a Nissan. Not a Red Bull, not a championship car, a Nissan Nismo GT500. Sideways, full throttle, completely alive. While other drivers were sightseeing ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix, taking photographs, playing the media game, Max Verstappen was at Fuji Raceway, pushing unfamiliar machinery to its absolute limit in conditions that would send most drivers straight back to their hotel. No championship points, no team orders, no battery percentage telling him when he's allowed to attack. Just a man who cannot stop racing. And that one image, Verstappen in a Nissan, soaking wet, fans packed around the barriers just to watch him move, tells you everything about where Formula One currently stands with its greatest driver. So what happens when the sport's biggest star starts finding joy everywhere except Formula One? And has it already gone too far to fix? Let's talk about what actually happened at Fuji. Because this wasn't a publicity stunt, this wasn't a sponsor obligation. This was Verstappen, days before a Grand Prix weekend, choosing to drive a completely different car on a completely different circuit in the pouring rain, just because he wanted to. The car itself demands respect. The Nissan Nismo GT500, built for Japan's Super GT series, 2-liter inline engine producing around 650 horsepower, mid-engined, rear-wheel drive, just over 1,000 kilograms. In the dry, it's a handful. In the wet, it's a completely different animal. Verstappen pushed it to its limits anyway. Fans lined the barriers just to watch. Nissan executives stood in the pit lane, chatting with Max between runs, watching one of the world's most famous athletes treat their race car like it was built specifically for him. And here's the thing that nobody said out loud, but everybody felt. The smile on Verstappen's face at Fuji? Genuine, unforced. The kind of joy that doesn't arrive from team radio instructions or championship calculations. It arrived because a man who loves racing more than almost anything else on this planet was simply allowed to race. No politics, no regulations debate, no press conference where he has to carefully choose his words. Just Verstappen, a Nissan, and a wet track that demanded everything he had. But then the weekend arrived. The Formula One weekend, the Japanese Grand Prix. And the smile, it got harder to find. Because here's the brutal truth about Verstappen's 2026 Formula One season so far. 2 races in, and already the frustration is written all over every radio message, every press conference answer, every carefully worded but clearly loaded comment he makes. Before the season even started, Verstappen called the 2026 regulations anti-racing. Not cautiously, not diplomatically, flatly, directly, with zero interest in softening the message for the cameras. 2 races later, he doubled down. While other drivers quietly fell in line, suddenly discovering reasons to praise the new formula, Verstappen stayed exactly where he started, unmoved, consistent, and visibly disconnected from a sport he once dominated with terrifying ease. Formula One's own bosses pushed back publicly, called him wrong, suggested he should leave if he doesn't like it. And Verstappen's response to that? He went to the Nurburgring. Because when the most competitive racing driver on the planet feels like his sport is failing him, he doesn't sit quietly and wait for it to improve. He finds somewhere that still gives him what Formula One used to. And what he found at the Nürburgring? It changed everything. Picture perfect conditions at the Nordschleife, and Verstappen, climbing into the number 3 Mercedes for Team Verstappen Racing, immediately announced his intentions. First qualifying lap, cold tires, unfamiliar car on one of the most dangerous circuits ever built, 7 minutes, 51 seconds, 751 milliseconds. Pole position, 1.9 seconds faster than the next closest car. When the race went green, you didn't need to see the number on the door to know it was Verstappen. The way he stalked the safety car, the aggression into turn 1, holding off Christopher Haas's Audi R8, one of the Nordschleif's most respected veterans, through the opening corners. Haas retook the lead down the back straight at the end of lap 1, and suddenly, this was a race. For 7 relentless laps, these two traded positions through brutal traffic, caution zones, and the unforgiving chaos that defines Nurburgring endurance racing. Verstappen's average lap time across that opening stint, 8 minutes 5.525 seconds. Haas's, 8 minutes 5.768.
A quarter of a second per lap separated them, across 7 laps, on 60 kilometers of the world's most punishing circuit. Verstappen made his decisive move on lap 7, side by side down the straight, P1 retaken, clean, clinical, completely Verstappen. Then both cars pitted, and the race truly opened up. Danny Juncadella took the wheel and went absolutely metronomic, building the lead to 22.3 seconds by lap 13. Jules Goonen took over on lap 14 with a 55-second gap over the chasing Porsche, battled through offset strategies against the BMW, kept the hammer down. When Goonen pitted on lap 23, Verstappen Racing held a 23-second lead with 40 minutes remaining. Max climbed back in to finish what he started. He crossed the line 59.5 seconds ahead of his nearest rival. Not a victory, a statement. Team Verstappen Racing stood on the top step. Max Verstappen, winner of his second NLS race, first ever victory in a Mercedes. And then, the call came. Post-race, celebrations, the paddock buzzing. And then, disqualified. A technical infringement during qualifying, exceeding the permitted tire set limit. The win removed from the results, just like that. On paper, devastating. But here's what no rulebook, no stewards panel, and no technical regulation could ever erase. The 59-second winning margin was real. The domination across every driver, every stint, every lap, completely, undeniably real. The performance existed. It happened. The stopwatch doesn't lie. And the audience that showed up to witness it? 6.1 million live stream views in 24 hours. The onboard camera from the number 3 car alone, 1 million views. Every other car on the grid, between 5 and 25,000 views. One driver, one weekend, 100 times the attention of everyone else combined. Christopher Haas, the man who battled Verstappen wheel to wheel in that opening stint, was flooded with positive messages after the race. He said the battle was exactly what he lives for in motorsport. Drivers who got overtaken weren't frustrated. They were posting the footage themselves, because being part of Verstappen's story is worth more than a finishing position. And standing in that paddock, Verstappen said, "This whole event is simply great, also with all the fans and to see how passionate they are. I'm happy to be a part of that. For me, the Nurburgring Nordschleife is one of the most idiotic circuits in the world. And I mean that in a positive way." Then, one final comparison to his day job in Formula One. At least you can go full throttle without having to look at the battery. No PR filter, no carefully chosen words, just the truth, from a man who's stopped pretending otherwise. So where does this road lead? Scenario 1. Formula One listens. The 2026 regulations evolve. The racing improves. Verstappen finds his hunger again inside the sport that made him a legend. The tension fades. The greatest driver of his generation stays exactly where history says he belongs. Scenario 2. The gap widens. Every Nürburgring weekend outperforms every Grand Prix, in passion, in viewership, in feeling. The 24 hours of Nürburgring arrives in May. The world watches. And Formula One realizes it is no longer the main event in its own champion's story. Scenario 3. Formula One opens a spreadsheet, stares at NLS2's numbers, stares at their own, and understands, with cold, quiet certainty, that they spent years building a global sport around one man's brilliance, without ever asking what would happen when that man found somewhere better to race. Empires don't fall with explosions. They fall the moment the most important person in the room stops believing the mission is worth fighting for.
The disqualification took the trophy, but it couldn't take the lap times, it couldn't take the crowd, it couldn't take 1 million views on a single onboard camera, and it absolutely could not take the expression on Verstappen's face, the one Formula One hasn't put there in a very long time. At Fuji, he drove a Nissan in the rain just because he could. At the Nurburgring, he dominated 60 kilometers of the world's most dangerous circuit and smiled doing it. In Formula One, he's managing batteries and answering questions about regulations he openly despises. So tell me, is Formula One still the pinnacle of motorsport, or just the most expensive version of it? Because the 24 hours of Nurburgring is coming, the entire world will be watching, and for the first time in a long time, Formula One won't be the main event. This season isn't about who's fastest, it's about who still believes the fight is worth having. Drop your answer in the comments, because this story, it's only just beginning.